Hi there folks, in this simple tutorial what I hope to show you is how to set up a basic space scene in Lightwave using say an object and a background and 2 or 3 lights. Apologies first off for the accent if you can't make it out. I'm afraid it's the only one I've got apart from a passable Sean Connery, so just stick with it, you'll get used to it. Okay, first off, for any space scene you need a spaceship. Being a bit of a Trek fan, I happen to have a few that I made earlier. So let's select one. Let's say the USS Kilimanjaro, Robert Friedman's design there. Okay, so we now have our spaceship in the scene. First off, let's have a proper look at that ship. If we go up here, we can select how that is displayed, and we'll go for shaded solid. So now we can see the ship more clearly. Normally you would turn that down maybe to bounding boxes or whatever if you had lots of objects in the scene and you needed to speed things up, but we want to see it to make working with it easier. So next thing we want to do actually before we do anything else is get our camera set up correctly. So if I select camera and then P for properties, we get the camera properties up. All you want to do here is tick the use global settings. That's basically, it forces the camera to use these render globals. Render globals. And in here we set all the settings. You can choose what size, various video formats and stuff. So we'll render it at 800 by 600 for speed's sake. And down here, render quality. We have it set to realistic. And what you want to do is turn on transparency, reflections, shadows. The rest don't matter at this stage, they're for more advanced stuff. Filtering. You always want to have at least a 3-pass filtering. This is basically anti-aliasing passes to make things smoother, smooth the edges off. Nothing makes CGI images look more clunky and obvious than very sharp edges. Remember that when you're rendering or modelling. We could also do things like turn on motion blur here and particle blur, but since we're animating we don't want to do that. Since we're not animating, sorry. We would need them for animation but not for this. Okay, so we'll set what it's going to look like. We have our model. Let's move the camera. Now if I move the camera normally, you can see it doesn't actually point at the model. I'll have to rotate it manually. If however I press the M for motion key, I can do a number of things here. I could parent it to the object, in which case it would stay in position exactly with the object. But what we want to do here is target the object. So as you can see, when I move now, object's in the center of the display. Lovely. So let's say the object is flying away from us. What do we do now? We set the lighting. By default you've got a distant light which is simulating millions of parallel rays coming from a sun somewhere. Which is fair enough, it's what we need, but it's in the wrong position. So again, if we select lights, you can see it's now highlighted, and press the M for motion key, we can target that light. So now we can move the light anywhere we like and instantly see the effect. Now what I like to do in these kind of scenes is basically use it as a rim light, a highlight. So we'll put it in that position there, and then we'll press P for properties and we'll get the options for the lights. First off, in any space scene, remove ambient intensity, turn it to 0. Ambient intensity is basically fake radiosity, fake bounced light from other objects in the scene. Since there are none in space, we don't want that. The next thing you want to do is maybe turn up the light's intensity. It's meant to be the sun after all, the most powerful light in the scene. So I like to crank that a little. So now we have our light, rim light. However, it's going to be way too dark here. So let's add a couple of fill lights. Now to do that, if we go to items and then clone, the light is already selected, so it will clone that item. So now we have 2 lights. And if I move that new light, you'll see it has the same properties as the old one, including the targeting. So let's move it somewhere where it's going to fill in the scene slightly and change its properties to turn that intensity down. Let's turn it down to 45%, say. So there we go. Now if I press F9 to do a test render of that, we'll see what the actual scene looks like. There we go, anti-aliasing being done. And there's our scene. Now as you can see, we've still got some strong shadows there and absolutely no background, so that's no good to us. Let's create another clone of that fill light. And let's move it up so it fills in those shadows somewhat. And again, we don't want it overpowering the original fill, so let's turn that down to say 20%. And let's give it a little bit of colour as well, just to add a little colour to the scene. Maybe there's a coloured object far off to the right. There we go. Now we've still got the problem of the backdrop, no backdrop. Now what I could do if I was animating, I would load a backdrop object, specifically something like a star field. And here we go, there's my star field. Now as you can see, it's changed the scale of the scene. I've got a 300 metre ship and a 5.5 million kilometre star field. If I press the square bracket key, the left square bracket key, I can bring that scale back down to a manageable level. There we go. So now, when I render, you will see we have our completed scene. We have 3 lights, we have a backdrop, and it's all looking fair enough. You can see it looks like a Trek scene. Now, since this is a still scene, we can actually get a bit more creative than that. And what you might want to do is load in a background image and match the model to that. So let's do that right now. What we need to do then is load in our background image. If we go to edit and edit, oh sorry, I'm getting on for myself. If we go to Windows and compositing options, we can actually composite in a background image. Now I've got a load of images I've made earlier, in the best Blue Peter tradition. So let's go to them. Now you can make your own background images, or you can download ones from NASA or wherever else. Let's choose one of the Earth backdrops. There we go. So we've now got a backdrop image there. You can't tell though, so let's make that visible. We edit display options. This decides how this actual screen looks, and down here we have camera view, background, and background image. And this will allow us to see the background image. It's that simple. So now we have our scene, and we can change our lights to match. So let's move our rim light so it looks like it's coming from the same direction as the light that lit the planet. And let's change our fill lights. Let's move our primary fill light so that it's simulating the light bouncing off the planet. And let's give it a more intense blue colour, just so it looks like the reflected blue light from the planet. And now our third light, our smaller fill off to the side here, is still filling in this bit here to give us a little detail. So now we can render that and see how that looks, and we'll see if we need to make any changes to the scene. And as you can see, we can. Now what's happened here is we've left our starfield object in, and the background image is behind that, so this has ruined the scene. Let's clear that object off. So select object, make sure it's selected to starfield, and then clear selected. Job done. So now when we render this, we get a finished scene. Now obviously you would take a great deal of time setting up your scene. You're going to set your composition, get your ship looking just right, and you're going to select just the right background image, and you're going to play around with the lights for quite some time just to get it the way you like it. Maybe you don't want the harsh shadows, maybe you want it brighter, maybe you want all sorts of effects that you can do later in Photoshop. So it's up to you how you composite the scene. All I'm doing here is trying to show you how to use the basic tools, the basic properties of the lights and the movement of them, the positioning of the camera and the background image or the background object, just to get you to make your first space scenes. So as you can see, it's relatively simple once you know what to click, as with everything. So I hope you got the grip of that no problem, and I'll go off and I'll make you some more tutorials for slightly more advanced techniques. Hope to hear from you soon. Bye.